Do you have a time schedule, Robin? Do you need to catch a plane, or are we under time constraints?
Was this going to go longer than a day?
No, I don't. But maybe you'd like to introduce your staff as well.
I will.
Thank you very much.
Chairman Wright and commission members, I am Robin Thorson, for the record. I'm the regional director for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to oversee all of the operations of the service, with the exception of our Special Investigators Office of Law Enforcement. For the states of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Hawaii, and the Pacific Islands, extending to Guam. I'm traveling today with Teresa Rabeau. Terry is in charge of our Endangered Species Act operations in those 4 states and territories. And I'm also accompanied by Stephen Doherty, and I hope that he had a chance to meet all of you just before this meeting. Stephen is the Senior Advisor to Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar for the Pacific Northwest. Brian Kelly is our new Idaho State project leader who will be in Boise. He's completing his household move, or he would be here today. And I'll be referring to him in a moment about our engagement at the local level to address wolf issues. I take the time to introduce my colleagues because some of your questions may be answered by them other than me, if the chair will allow that.
Yes.
On August 4th, the federal court issued this decision about wolves, and that's what precipitates my appearance here today. And on August 11th, the states of Montana and Idaho joined a phone call with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and our fleet of attorneys to discuss where we might be going from here. And we had more questions on both sides than we had answers. But a few of the questions posed by Idaho, we promised that we would give you some written answers, and Mr. Chairman, I provided you those this morning for whatever use you might have for those. But we're glad to amplify those. They're quite brief answers on some of the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Robin, and we're passing those around right now.
And then I also just want to say thank you for traveling to the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies meeting, both you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner McDermott. It was important not only for the informal conversations that you had, but for the highest level of leadership of the service to hear in person the situation in Idaho and not be dealing with it as a administrative matter, but one that has very real consequences for the people and natural resources of this state. So thank you for going to that meeting. I emphasize our presence here today, and my remarks will be very brief, is to respond to your questions and comments, to be accountable for a failure of a federal rule that now leaves Idaho in a very difficult situation, and also to show by being in here in person our commitment to working with the state to address the complicated and very difficult situation regarding wolves. It is a privilege to appear before the Commission. Thank you for this time. I also want to thank you because you're volunteers, and thank you for your public service to your state. They are fortunate to have you. And then one last comment before I dive in. Men and women who are professionals in the Idaho Department of Fish and Game have been extraordinary to work with. They are excellent. And we're so lucky that in conservation, or whatever patch of a state or agency people wear, their professionals are so committed and so dedicated. I really want to pay my compliments to Director Calderon and the staff of the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. All right, let's launch it. Enough with the niceties, let's launch into this tough stuff. My remarks will be very brief and very blunt. I understand you've already been briefed by your lawyer, and she is excellent, and you've heard the unwelcome news. Wolves in Idaho are once again on the list of threatened and endangered species. This is a profound disappointment to you and to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Let me briefly comment on why we got to where we are. 2 years ago, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service delisted wolves in Idaho because they were biologically recovered. That has not changed. 2 years ago, we delisted wolves in Idaho because Idaho had a wolf management plan in place to show the capability and commitment of the state to manage this as a resident species. That has not changed. And then Idaho, this commission, authorized and operated a state hunt, a fair chase wolf hunt. That was challenged and it was upheld under challenge. We support that hunt and continued hunting of wolves consistent with your state management plan. So Idaho took all the measures that were necessary to achieve a very important goal for your constituents, the restoration of state management of wolves. The fastest route to state management was recovery of wolves. Opposition to recovery of wolves would have dragged this out as a federal operation in the state. So to get to recovery the fastest is to delist the wolves. Idaho did everything right to walk that path, to have wolves recovered and to have wolves delisted. So what happened? The court ruled that as a matter of law, the Fish and Wildlife Service's rationale for delisting the wolf in Idaho was flawed. That the service could not delist wolves in only 2 of the states in the Northern Rocky Mountain population of wolves. We had to deal with the Northern Rocky Mountain population as one. This was a legal matter, an administrative matter, and the court ruled stridently against the rule that the Fish and Wildlife Service had operated under to delist. So you have many questions and many issues involving wolves. And the biggest one is where are we going to go from here? And I just want to emphasize as we discuss that your actions succeeded. And wolves were delisted because they were recovered here. The Endangered Species Act would have mandated the recovery here. The steps that Idaho took sped up the possibility of state management. You were rewarded for getting that job done, and now we are having to withhold that reward. So your actions succeeded. Your first request has been for a mechanism under which to continue a managed sport hunt in 2010-11. Our staffs have worked together to look at some paths for this. The likelihood of finding one is so small as for me to almost say impossible, although we're not willing to look at anything that might work. We share the commitment to a sport hunt in the state, but we are not able to identify at this point a path. I think that you might have had a discussion about a potential path that we can respond to in a moment, and I'll finish my remarks so that you can move on with those questions. The Department of the Interior, and this is both the lawyers and the leadership, have emphasized, and I share and repeat their point, that we will not be promoting decisions that we know are legally indefensible. There have been so many losses in court on wolves at this point to proceed with something that has a high risk for litigation loss would frustrate long-term issues rather than relieve them. But otherwise, we're willing to look at everything to move forward on any path where success could be achieved. In the near term, immediately, we're standing ready to receive Idaho's proposal to control wolves in portions of the experimental population that are experiencing a high level of wolf-caused ungulate mortality. And I believe that's under public comment now in the state or nearby. And then once we receive it, we'll turn it around in no more than 60 days. We anticipate approval of the opportunity or advancing this 10J rule. But that depends on the rule, so I don't want to prejudge that.